like not thinking rationally. This is a person who is not looking to come to a regular solution.
No.
This is a person who's looking to take you down. This is a person who is willing to take themselves down to take you down. I didn't know that narcissists could be women. I didn't know what a covert narcissist was. I just knew that the experience for me was extremely traumatic, extremely painful. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what station you are in life, narcissists can get your hooks into you because they don't seek out the person who has very little value. They seek out the people who have so much value. They're opportunists, right? You know, that's what they want.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Quantum Woman. My name is Shamina Taylor, and you guys are in for an amazing treat. I have the most special guest ever to be our number one first guest on the show, and her name is Rebecca Zung. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hello. So happy to be here with you.
I want you guys to know who Rebecca is. You probably heard me mention her throughout some of my podcasts and whatnot. Rebecca Zung is one of the top 1% of attorneys in the nation. Okay, that is huge. Having been recognized by the U.S. News World Report as the best lawyer in America and as a legal elite by Trend Magazine, and recognized by her peers in the judiciary as AV preeminent rated in family law. Okay, there's a lot of things, and this is like all gets into like all the things about her, but I want you to know this, is that she's got 40 million views on YouTube, and she is the go-to expert on YouTube and wherever else on narcissism. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I found Rebecca. I was on there looking at different videos about narcissism because I was also working on breaking a pattern with myself. And I saw this lady come through the feed, and you know how they say the suggestion to watch later. And I just started watching her videos, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my mom needs to watch her, because my mom was going through a divorce at the time. And Rebecca also being an attorney, I mean, I just absolutely resonated with what she was saying. And I was at a mastermind or an event in September of last year. And I remember walking through this where they were having a party, and this woman walked by me, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're like the narcissist expert. And I just stopped her in her tracks, and I'm like, I know you. And it's literally been a friendship since then. And honestly, I have met so many powerful women in this industry. And I've got to tell you, Rebecca is on my top 5 about women who are in abundance, who are really in this to help change the world. Like her heart is serving in such a big way. And I really feel it'll do you a service to listen to this episode. Definitely go check her out, but we're going to get started. So Rebecca, how did you get to become a narcissist expert? Because I know it's not in your relationship, and I know it was in the in your law firm at the time that you were working, is where you became very aware of what a narcissist is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like when I was a kid, I was like pretending like Ken was a narcissist when I was playing Barbies or something. You know, it's not like, oh, this is what I'm going to do when I'm a grown up. You know. And honestly, even when I was practicing law, I did high net worth divorce law for 20 years. It's not even like that word was thrown around all that much until the last couple of years. I had another divorce attorney friend, and we used to joke that our next book was going to be called "My Husband is Controlling, My Wife is Crazy," because that's what they all used to say. I mean, it wasn't really all that prominent of a word until the last couple of years. So it really wasn't until a few years ago I merged my practice with, I had a very, very high-end practice, you know, the go-to practice in that area. And I was just really wanting to do other entrepreneurial things. I knew I was more of an entrepreneur at heart. And so I went into a number of different entrepreneurial endeavors. And in one of those endeavors, I got involved with somebody in a business partnership who turned out to be a covert narcissist. And the person was actually a female. And I didn't know that narcissists could be women. I didn't know what a covert narcissist was. I just knew that the experience for me was extremely traumatic, extremely painful. And this was after I had built a massive, huge, very successful law practice. And I'm telling you, and I was only in this relationship for, you know, a year at the most. And it was so awful. It actually brought back feelings of when I had been bullied as a kid. And I mean, it sent me back to therapy, all this stuff that I, even after I had long thought that I had been on the other side of all of that. And so I tell people all of this because, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what station you are in life, narcissists can get your hooks into you because they don't seek out the person who has very little value. They seek out the people who have so much value. And, they're opportunists, right? That's what they want. They don't want the clearance rack. They want somebody who
High
is
value.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And they're extremely, extremely good at what they do. And it was extremely, extremely traumatic for me and so painful that it sent me down this path of reading and learning and researching and doing all this stuff about narcissism for myself, for my own healing. And at the time, I was still practicing law. And so I started going, well, wait a minute, I could actually apply this to my cases. And so I actually started seeing massive movement all of a sudden in my cases. And that was when it was like I had discovered penicillin. I was like, oh my God, look at these narcissists actually moving and being motivated to settle. And that was when I realized I was actually onto something. So,
Incredible. They're
yeah.
they're litigious. I found narcissists. Like every every narcissist that I've ever encountered are in multiple lawsuits. It's
Well,
just
yeah.
because
And
it's
in
crazy.
fact, it's interesting that you bring that up because, and you're an attorney, but I just finished my new book, which is actually in pre-order now, which people can go to slaythebully.com and check
I
out
love that.
pre-order because the book is called Slay the Bully: How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. And actually Chris Voss wrote the foreword for my book. But here's an interesting statistic that I found. I knew when I was practicing law that probably 85% of the cases settled and 15% of the cases ended up going to court. And, it was like, I could never figure out why 85% of the cases settle, 15% of the cases would go to trial. And it was like, almost like clockwork. But then I found out through doing my research that roughly 15% of the population are narcissists. And I thought, I really don't think that that's an accident that those two numbers happen to line up. And here's why. There's something that drives narcissists called narcissistic supply. And narcissists are, well, let me just define a narcissist, kind of in lay terms. A narcissist is a person who feels, and I always try to make sure I emphasize the word feel because all people have inherent value, but a narcissist feels like they don't have inherent value. They feel totally and completely empty inside. And because they feel that way, they have to try to get all of their sense of value from external sources. And so there's two different, and that they call that narcissistic supply.
Right.
And there's two different forms of narcissistic supply. It's diamond level supply, which is what these are my terms, diamond level supply, which is how they look to the world. And that's their best form. That's the form that they will protect and defend at any cost, at any cost, at the cost of their children, at the cost of loved ones, at the cost of anything. How they look to the world is more important to them than absolutely anything. And so this could be prestige, it could be money, it could be power, it could be, whatever it is, but it's how they look to the world. And then there's what I call the dark underbelly of narcissistic supply, which is not the side that they necessarily show everybody, but is also very, very important to them, which is controlling people, devaluing people, manipulating people, that building themselves up through pushing other people down. So in whatever form that is, could be physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, whatever it is. And so there's those two different layers of narcissistic supply. Both are very, very important to them. But when push comes to shove, they will let go of the coal level supply if it means that this diamond level supply is being threatened. So in a negotiation, my SLAY methodology, which is strategy, leverage, anticipate, you meaning focusing on you being on the offensive and your mindset, you have to build a form of leverage, or many different forms of leverage, such that you're threatening a form of supply that's more important to them to keep than the supply that they get from jerking you around. Otherwise, you're never going to be out of it, because they want to keep both. They want to keep both. They're so greedy. They're like vultures. They're always in starvation mode. They're always in scarcity mode. So they need it all. And so the myth, the problem is that when most people are negotiating or most people are dealing with narcissists, they're only focusing on, they want to win. They're only focusing over here. They're forgetting about this. And that myth is totally wrong.
So people should go after the diamond supply?
You need to create leverage.
Leverage.
You can't actually do something with it, though, because if you do, then your leverage is gone. Because if you actually obliterate it, then your leverage is gone. So that's really the dance that you have to do, right?
What would you suggest someone does if they're trying to leverage that supply? Let's say if they're in negotiations with a narcissist, like what would be your number two two tactics that they could use?
Well, I mean, there's a number of other things that you can do as well, because you always have to keep in mind that their ego is so important to them, how they look. So you can also build a strategy around making it seem like they came up with the way to settle it, or they came up with the way to make it, so that, so that you look like you lost in some way or something like that, or that, you wanted something so badly that you didn't even want it at all. And that they took it from you, so you have to kind of play this game with them. Or, there's another kind of strategy. I call it fluff or favor, vomit later, which is kind of where you fluff up their ego in order to get something that you want. And then, you vomit later, right? Because who really cares? So there's a whole bunch of different strategies that you can use, but you have to understand that this is what you're dealing with, and you have to take your ego out of it.
So in order to negotiate with a narcissist, you've got to be basically smarter and realize what you're negotiating with, and but take your emotions out of the situation so that you can, be more tactical, is what you're saying, have more strategies in order to deal with, because they're basically in children, right? We're dealing with their emotional levels, but at 8 years old, what you're dealing with narcissists, right? Is that usually, or do you know what the level is? I mean, you're not dealing with a grown person here. You're dealing with someone who's behaving like a child, right?
Correct. And in fact, I know you do a lot with emotional mastery and that sort of thing, which is, I'm really glad that you brought this up because it is somewhere in that range. And, um, I actually saw somewhere where there was a neuroscientist that talked about how emotional mastery is actually the most important skill that any human being could ever have, which I thought was really, really interesting, which I think is true. But, um, in my research, I found that what happened with narcissists is that during their childhood, they were exposed to trauma on a regular basis. And what happens with narcissists is that, well, with all humans, is that when we are exposed to trauma, our brains dump chemicals into our bodies so that we can fight or flight, right? And so it's cortisol, it's epinephrine, it's adrenaline, or whatever it is. And then if that happens on a regular basis, it can cause damage to the brain. It can actually cause arrested development in the limbic system part of the brain.
Right. So
And
emotions.
which is what, where the emotions are housed. And so what happens with narcissists then is that they do get stuck in that whatever age it was that they were. And so then as they grow older, yes, the neocortex, the other part of the brain continues to develop, but when they're presented with stimuli that causes them to feel like they are in that survival mode again. And it could be any kind of stimuli. It could be, an eye roll. It could be a tone. It could be nothing that you perceive to be, some kind of something, but to them it's a something. Any perceived slight, then that limbic system part of their brain kicks in and takes back over, and it's called splitting. I mean, they literally are in that part of their brain again, and that's it. And sometimes it's rage that takes it over at that
Oh,
point.
yeah.
And that's what you're dealing with. And so when you're negotiating with somebody who is in that state, you're not two regular reasonable people who are sitting across from each other having a conversation. This is a person who is not looking to come to a regular solution.
Yeah.
This is a person who's looking to take you down. This is a person who is willing to take themselves down to
Mhm.
take you down. I mean,
Absolutely.
they're like not thinking rationally.
No, resolution is not one of their top things. Like saying I'm sorry, moving on from it. They just want you to be in suffering. Like, let's how do you put you into basically put them here and put you them higher than you. So they have that that hierarchy, that control. What would you say is if somebody was going through a negotiation with a narcissist, like what can they do for their own selves? Like how do they stay? Because it's got to be emotionally draining. I mean, for your clients and people you've worked with, what is the best self-care? What can they do to protect themselves this process without, because they're getting basically re-traumatized many times, and many of them probably haven't gone and done the deep work yet because they're in the moment of actually breaking free from them, from you say it was a divorce or whatnot, or how you're breaking free from that relationship. How do they take care of themselves so they can stay on the right track, where they don't feel like it's them and they keep the process going?
Yeah, good questions. Good questions. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a divorce. It could be, like with me, it
Right.
was a business partnership.
Right.
And I'm telling you, even with me in my business partnership, it was, I mean, I was in a different city. I wasn't like, it wasn't even, some people it's a work situation, some people it's a family situation. It's not
Definitely.
even a negotiation, but it's a family member or something like that. So I say step one, don't run. Step two, make a U-turn. Step three, break free, because you are literally turning it I call it like turning a ship around or something. You're literally trying to turn and make a U-turn so that you can like start to feel like you're on the offensive for a change instead of the defensive
Right.
constantly. And then you can start to finally start speaking to them and start feeling like you have some power. It's like a power switch. In fact, like one of my new programs is called Power Switch.
I love that.
And then start to finally feel like you can break free. But I call it step one, don't run. Step two, make a U-turn, because I want people to understand, like, you weren't conditioned overnight, and it's not going to take, you can't just turn it around overnight. It's baby steps. So in that first step, you just want to start to create some boundaries, and just start to, maybe that first boundary is just to say, I'm not going to be spoken to like that. Just to even just that, just to say to yourself, I'm going to, create a boundary of, this way of speaking to me does not work for me, and be okay with that, or get up and walk out of the room if a person is speaking to you disrespectfully, and let that be your first step, because that's okay. That's okay if that's your first step, and forgiving yourself for decisions that you made when you were in survival mode, because the past is the past, and you can only start from where you are now. I mean, wherever you are is the jumping off point.
Absolutely.
I mean, you cannot look back. You can only look forward. So that's the first step. And then getting education and learning that it is not you. One of my favorite books is The Four Agreements. I absolutely love that book. It is such an easy read. You can read it in an afternoon, and it's 4 agreements that you make with yourself. And one of the agreements is never to take anything personally, because the way people treat other people is directly related to the way they feel about themselves.
Absolutely.
And if people feel good about themselves and they treat people well, and if people feel bad about themselves and they treat people poorly, and hurt people, and narcissists bleed out all over the other people, because they feel like crap about themselves. And so you cannot take it personally how they have treated you. It's because they just don't like themselves. They hate themselves inside. They can sit around and say they love themselves and they're so great and all that. It's because they're deeply fearful people. Truth of the matter is, they're more afraid of you than you are of them.
Absolutely. Why would you think that? I mean, those are great steps to take. I mean, education's huge. I mean, just go binge on Rebecca's stuff on YouTube, and there's other amazing people in there too, and read her book. But why do you think people are so stuck in such a cycle for so long with them? You hear people that are, I mean, they know they need to leave, or they know that this relationship's not serving them. They know that they're not using their voice. Why do you think? I mean, I have my own theories, but why do you think people stay so long and they know they need to leave?
So there's something called a trauma bond.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a physiological connection in a trauma bond. There's a study done by a guy named Robert Sapolsky, who was a psychologist out of Stanford University. And he did a study on monkeys. And these monkeys were given a reward every time they did something good. And he then studied the dopamine levels in their brain, and it literally didn't even measure. And then they were given a reward just intermittently if they did something good. And, they didn't know when they were going to get this reward. And when that happened, just the anticipation, just like, oh, I might get it, caused the dopamine levels in their brain to rise to the level of cocaine. So they actually became physiologically addicted.
Addiction.
To, I might get it. They needed it. They needed that hit. It was that push, pull, push, pull, push, pull. And that's what happens when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, because they push you all the way to the brink. Like, you cannot take one more minute of their emotional abuse and you're out the door, and then they suck you back in. And, oh, I can't live without you. How could you do this to me? And the guilt and all of that. And then you're sucked back in, and it's that hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. And you're literally physiologically addicted.
Absolutely.
And they pick people who have, their own core wounds as well.
Absolutely. Like you hit both things. I'm glad that you guys are, if you're listening to my podcast, I've said this before, it's the trauma bonding and it's the addiction. And we get addicted to that cycle of getting that hit from them. And we don't realize, like, this is why a lot of women go after the bad boys, or they go for the ones that are, the attachment issues where they're avoidant. And you'll see yourself being in that cycle because your own trauma is being attracted to the situation. So if you can get to the root of it, you can get out of the cycle. But it's all comes with a choice, right? Whether or not you want to end what's happening. This is amazing, but I want to find out more about Rebecca. Rebecca is a wealth of knowledge and she's amazing, but there's another side to Rebecca that I think you guys all need to see. And so maybe sometimes she only reserves it for her friends or people on her inner circle, but she's got such a big heart and she really cares. Now, Rebecca, what do you feel like your big imprint that you want to leave in the world? I know this is like a big question, but like, I always talk to myself about this all the time. Like, if I left the earth tomorrow, like, what is my legacy going to be left behind? And that's how I live every day, to be honest with you, to make sure, as Wayne Dyer says, don't let the music die in you. But when you see the work that you're doing, or what, it could be even bigger than what this is, but what does that look like for you?
Oh gosh, good question. I mean, obviously, I hope it's my children and my grandchildren doing well and happy, and but on, bigger than that, I have created a nonprofit with Lindsay Snyder, and who is the owner of In-N-Out and Burger. And she and I have a vision to provide legal aid for people who need it. And our model is different than other people's. Most legal aid, around, systems around the country, it's a beleaguered system. And just to give a little bit of background for people who don't understand how legal aid works. I mean, most people don't realize this, but the Constitution provides that you get a lawyer appointed to you in this country if you are a criminal. And that is it. So if you're a criminal, you get a lawyer. Anybody else, you're on your own. So there is a massive justice gap in this country, because the majority of the people in this country, make, I don't know what the average, salary is in this country, or, average people, what they make, 35,000. I don't know what it is, but, it's not a whole heck of a lot. And, the average savings in this country, I don't know what it is, 2,500. I'm not sure. But the average attorney charges $300, $400, $500 an hour.
Yeah,
It's a hell of a lot. And then, the average retainer, $5,000. I don't know, but there's a massive disparity there. And then, so for people who are in dire need of things for basic human rights, like keeping their children, keeping their homes, veterans' rights, human trafficking, things like that, immigration, I mean, they're not, there's no hope for them. That's it. They don't get the help. And, I'm not talking about corporate stuff or whatever. I'm talking about basic human rights. they don't get an attorney unless they try to go to legal aid. Now, here's what legal aid does. Legal aid only takes certain types of cases. There are legal aid attorneys who have hundreds of cases, and they're way underpaid.
Way underpaid.
So what our model is more like a Make-A-Wish type of a model. And so what we're doing is pairing donors with paid attorneys and actual cases, so that people can actually get real help from paid attorneys. And so, like, for example, I have a donor right now whose daughter committed suicide because she lost her children to a narcissist in a custody matter. This couple would like to donate funds to somebody who's in a custody battle with a narcissist. And so we are, we're still in the process of hiring an executive director. In fact, when I get off with you, I'm going to be doing another set of interviews for an executive director. But once I get that person on board and, we get up and running, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be pairing donors with attorneys and cases so that people can get real help. It's a completely different model, so that people can get actual legal aid in this country.
I love this. I'm so glad I asked. I didn't know all of this. This is amazing. This is the side of Rebecca. I love what she does. I used to work for legal aid when I was in law school too. So I know how it is. People, just the income alone and, just could kind of, disqualify people, and they're not making that much, and it's just, and it's amazing that you're doing that. That to me is beautiful legacy work. Like, just because I know for you, I can't speak for you, but I'm sure, why I went to law school too is to, to give people a voice and to stand up, because, I had a bigger voice than others, and I'm sure you too. So you're helping others have the voice and the protection at the same time to have their rights. So amazing. This has been absolutely amazing, Rebecca. I'm gonna have to have you back again, because I really, really enjoy their conversations. And I want to ask you though, because we talked about this earlier, what book do you feel like changed your life? Because you are a wealth of knowledge.
Oh gosh. There are so many.
I know. I see them behind you right now. I love books. I buy books every week. I buy books. I'm a booker.
Yeah. I'm going to say A Woman's Worth by Marianne
Oh,
Williamson.
that's a good one. That's a great book.
Yeah. Yeah. I read that book when I was about 30, and I absolutely love that book. Marianne Williamson is amazing. And I gave that book to both of my daughters, and I just think that that's really powerful, especially if you're a woman.
Why? What was the number one takeaway from it?
Just how powerful we are as women. And she referred to women as goddesses, and how, especially because, I think, as a woman, I felt like I grew physically from 0 to 20, and then so much from 20 to 30, and just, finding my power and finding my footing and who I was. And, I got divorced around that time, and I went back to law school around that time, and I'd had 3 kids by the time. I had 3 kids. I got married at 19. I had 3 kids by the time I was 22. I got divorced. I went back to law school as a single mom, and I met my husband in law school. We've been married now for 22, it'll be 23 years. We have a fourth. We have one together, but it's my fourth. And so, it was just so powerful for me to read that book. And, I remember one line in there where she talked about, if people are talking about you behind your back or something, just turn around and smile and say to yourself, I haven't even started yet.
Ah, I love that. Give me chills. And on that note, I feel like that is a great way to wrap this up. And being that this is the Quantum Woman podcast, we are all about awakening that inner goddess, that inner badass, that inner, you that can have and do and be everything. And Rebecca does reflect that of being, in her and unlocking her quantum woman. And I'm so glad she came here to share what, one woman is doing to change many lives. If anything, when you look at Rebecca, you'll see her story, and she just took action, and she took action, and she wanted to make a change. And she's one woman right now, but she's changing thousands, if not millions of lives at 40 million views. And I encourage you guys to go and check her out, because she's amazing. Rebecca, let everybody know how they can get in contact with you and reach you, and what's something they should definitely consume of yours.
Thank you. Well, definitely pre-order my book at slaythebully.com. If you pre-order it, you actually get access to the entire manuscript early, and you get all kinds of really cool bonuses as well, including a whole program and all kinds of really cool things like $400 worth of bonuses. And if you go to winmynegotiation.com, you get access to a free ebook, by the way. It's 15 pages. It's my Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet. Literally, I think close to 100,000 people have downloaded that. Yeah, it's an amazing, amazing ebook. And I've had so many people win their negotiations just on that alone. So definitely grab that. And my YouTube channel is youtube.com, Rebecca Zung, ESQ. And my Instagram is at Rebecca Zung. My website is rebeccazung.com. So
My gosh, thank you for coming. This was amazing. And Rebecca set the bar so high, and no pun there. On having of having guests on the
the two
show.
lawyers over here.
Right. And but I mean, I attract powerhouses. I have friends that are powerhouses. This is just how we are, and when you get the ability to be around a woman who's a game changer and who is in such abundance, like Rebecca is. I can't say this enough. She's done her work, because you'll see someone who's in victimhood, which is a scarcity. Rebecca is a complete opposite of that, because she is will hype you up. And I really feel like you guys need to go all follow her, get what she said, do the things. And thank you, Rebecca, again for coming on. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.